came in poisoning wells, killing Palestinians, massacring. People don't know this history.
The goal when I started fighting was always to become the UFC champion.
The only elite XC welterweight champion.
And former Strikeforce middleweight champion.
People always say you follow your dreams and doing all this. You can't just say you're gonna follow your dreams and not work your ass off.
What was the reason that you wanted to get involved in MMA?
It doesn't really make any sense, but as soon as I started training, I was just completely hooked and absorbed. I was just so addicted, it's what I wanted to do. And when you want to do something that bad, you have to just follow it.
Big thing that I want to ask you is about your fight with GSP.
That fight was absolutely insane. I've been to hundreds of fights.
Yeah.
That's like the top 2 or 3 most hyped fights I've ever been to.
How do you manage in a fight the mental fatigue?
Fighting is a tough sport. But the truth of the matter is a lot of people don't know that the Jewish people are the ones that brought terrorism to the Middle East. English soldiers and hanging them. They were doing massive terrorism out there. And I'm getting like death threats. Some of them might be legitimate.
The big thing right now is Mike Tyson versus Jake. What do you think the outcome of that fight's going to be?
I think YouTube boxing is great for the sport. I know a lot of fighters probably aren't going to like me saying that. No, I don't hate trans people, but I'm not going to pretend like it's a real woman. That's where I draw the line. I'm not going to be like, no, I think you're a woman. What the fuck, dude? Younger me would go and beat the shit out of this dude. Testosterone and estrogen are extremely serious, heavy drugs, and they're giving this to teenagers like nothing because they want to switch sex.
You become like a voice, a little bit of a red pill voice.
You have to be like a strong, dominant man, always being tougher, never quit, never backing down.
Kicking ass, taking names, and today we are here with a very special guest, Jake Shields. Jake Shields, Jake, first off, thank you so much for being here. Jake, you've had, okay, so you fought in, I'm trying to list like the names of the organizations.
Yeah,
you fought like 3 or 4.
I fought a bunch of big shows.
XFC, right?
Yeah,
well,
UFC. You fought UFC, which is, the biggest one, but then I fought with Strikeforce, which at the time, Strikeforce was massive. They were on CBS and Showtime. They were a direct competitor with UFC until UFC actually bought them to kill them because they were starting to steal a bunch of fighters from the UFC.
Yeah.
And they're starting to be such serious competition. So I was the champ there. I was a fight Elite XC, which was also big.
Yep.
They were on CBS, did Kimbo Slice, but they ended up merging with Strikeforce. I was Rumble in the Rock champion, which is a BJ Penn show in Hawaii, and also Shudo champion, which at the time in Japan, fighting was massive in Japan. So I would go out and fight in Japan and be a big star in Japan and come back in the US and no one would know me.
Right.
So that was a little weird. But
and then also you were the Pan Am America champion. And then did you do IBJ or Worlds?
Yeah, I did the IBJJFs. I did that. I've only done the one competition to the Pan Ams and I won that. Mm-hmm. It's IBJJF. It's a cool thing, but it doesn't really pay. So it's hard for me to like. Yeah. It's a cool prestige. So I've done it once and went and won it, but it's hard to want to go back and do it.
Okay, so going into your accolades, because there's just so many, right? So you also have an interesting thing, actually, is you're one of the, I guess I saw this on a recent podcast you did, is you've become a big voice on Twitter. Yeah, kind of by accident, kind of just started, I think during COVID and stuff, I was getting frustrated, so I never really tweeted before. My manager occasionally would tweet out something I was doing, but I didn't really use Twitter, so I randomly started tweeting out, against the lockdowns and that type of stuff. Wasn't a big fan of the Black Lives Matter riots either, and at the time I was hated for it because the lockdowns were extremely popular and the riots were extremely popular. Looking back, most people now realize the lockdowns were stupid and letting people just riot, and cause crime. That's the main reason why crime's up now, because cops wanted to stop doing their jobs, and Black Lives Matter turned out to be a scam organization that was just stealing money and all that. So when I got on Twitter, it wasn't popular, but it was things I felt strongly about. So I started speaking my opinions, and then my account started blowing up, and now it's getting massive. It's kind of I didn't realize it until someone sent me the analytics, and it was like I guess they put me in political accounts, and I was like top 10 in the world. I'm like, holy crap! Yeah,
and I just randomly post some things. I'm going against guys that do that full time.
I feel like it's a UFC thing though, because a lot of these UFC guys end up on Twitter, and they end up being really big on Twitter, and then the UFC promotes Twitter because of during the fight, tweet during the fight, and so you get all of these UFC related guys promoting, which I think is really smart. And I think Dana's super smart with the way he's been.
Well, I think he's also been pretty good about just staying out of people's business. A lot of these sports, if you start talking about the stuff some of us talk about, they'll shut you down, they'll fine you. I mean, I'm not affiliated with the UFC anymore, so I can say what I want. But guys like Sean Strickland, he really, he's people should follow him on Twitter because he's very controversial. You might not agree with everything he says, but he definitely pushes the boundaries of free speech. And most sports would just
fine. They
would fine a Muslim because he definitely pushes the boundaries. But I think it's entertaining. I agree with a lot of his stuff, not all of it, but I think people should be able to express their real opinions.
Yeah.
I think most people feel that way. They're sick of all this being told what you have to think and this and like a lot of these sports push the Black Lives Matter thing so heavy. All the guys having to kneel.
Or like if you don't wear like a pin or something, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I was actually talking to a bunch of the black football players in San Francisco and Oakland. They were like all kind of rookies, new guys. And they didn't want to do all this stuff, but they were pressured into it. And they didn't feel like they had a big enough voice to not go out there and kneel and do this, but they didn't want to do it. It was interesting because my friend put me on a group chat. I didn't know that guys that well, but it was funny because they're like, they were as against as me, but they're like black guys. And it's not like, everyone called me racist for not wanting to do it, but it was just divisive, to kneel during the national anthem and just, the whole thing was divisive, and the UFC never really had that. There was a few fighters that did it, and they had every right to do that. No one criticized them. If a guy wanted to walk out with Black Lives Matter stuff in the UFC, that was totally welcome because we believe in free speech.
Right.
But it wasn't forced on anyone. Yeah. And the football, it was forced on these guys.
Yeah, and so in terms of like your views, what's really great, and I love about you is that you actually have a very diverse like kind of portfolio of like what you believe in.
Yeah,
and I think people a lot of times on a lot of these platforms try to paint somebody as like a certain way, and it's like, but if you really do a deep dive, like you've got issues on every side of the spectrum because you're a pro, like or not. Well, I won't say pro, but you're free Palestine. Like you believe that this is a real issue that's been happening, right? Like there's actually a really tragic situation. And then at the same time, you're also have a ton of like conservative followers who have, who may not agree with you on those
a lot
topics.
of them don't. No, and it's interesting because I view every topic individually. I think everyone should, but I think a lot of people are tribal and they just follow what their team does. And so it's I was kind of getting lumped in conservative because a few of my views are conservative, but I've always also had a lot of liberal views. I've always been anti-war. I was against, the Ukrainian war, the Iraq war, but the Republican Party also had turned against, or a lot of the Republican Party, not some of them, but were kind of against the Ukrainian war. So I was feeling like, okay, the anti-war right, the free speech right, I thought. Then the Israel war came in and they all just jumped on board telling lies like, yeah, obviously what Hamas did was terrible, but people that didn't come out of a vacuum. They don't understand it's been happening since before 1947. They came in, the Jews came in there. They made plans. The bankers made plans. I think it was 1897. They started slowly putting people over there, buying weapons. And then the early 1940s, they started doing a terrorist attacks, bombing people, poisoning wells, killing Palestinians, massacring. People don't know this history. They just repeat the lie of it was always the Jewish homeland. All this. It's true. Jews lived there about 1,500 years ago. But they're probably different Jews because most Jews now are mostly white. Not they don't look like Palestinians. So it's kind of ridiculous to say.
And so before we get into everything, well, the first thing I want to do is I want to go into your background and your story.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in hearing about, because I heard a little bit about your dad. Your dad got sick, had a couple or an accident.
Yeah.
And then I didn't hear much about your mom, so I'd like to hear about how she was like. But just, from going to, from starting really early days, a lot of people don't, might not know that you're super ingrained in UFC and all this history. Like you're ingrained now forever in history for these, for the sport of MMA. And it's such a new sport. And it's only been around for whatever, 30, 40 years, except for Asian leagues or whatever. Yeah. And even then, that's but a lot of those started 80s and stuff.
Yeah. Well, they had some out there, I think even back to the 50s, but they weren't as common. It wasn't as organized. They would have super fights occasionally. Between a Gracie and a judo master.
Yeah.
So they would have these massive super fights, but it wasn't common. Even Muhammad Ali was involved in one in Japan.
Yeah. So my question is to you, first off, if you could just tell us a little bit, and I know you've said this story before, but the story of how you got involved in MMA and then how somehow you became this big part of its history.
Yeah, I guess got into MMA originally through, like I said, early on, there was point, my dad early on got in a really bad car wreck. So, he was in a hospital bed for a couple of years and it was, so that's kind of tough. Didn't have a dad around for a minute. My mom was too busy taking care of him. But luckily, my parents still loved me, but they were just couldn't really do much when they were doing that. But luckily I had a brother that we'd run around with and get tough. So then as soon as my dad started getting healthier enough to come out of bed and stuff, he couldn't wrestle with us, which I think bummed him out. You know, you're young, you don't realize like, oh, how sad your dad is about that. But then, so he forced us into wrestling, and then we just kind of, my brother got really good right away. But so I'm like, all right, I just kept copying him. So got hooked to wrestling, did really well in wrestling, didn't win state, but I was like, you know, at the state level, competing there. And then after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't have any plans. And I was like, I didn't know you had to have certain classes to go to colleges and shit. We were just, you know, poor kids, didn't know that stuff. So I was, I go, oh crap, I guess I gotta go to junior college then. So then I switched over to Cuesta Junior College in San Luis Obispo. And I was wrestling there for a year. And then I saw, you know, Chuck Liddell, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I seen him out. I think it was like a Taco Bell or something.
Yeah,
he had like his Kempo tattoos and he's all jacked.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he has,
with his mohawk.
Yeah, I'm like, who's this guy? Because I thought I was pretty fucking tough. I won all my street fights I'd been in. So I go over and start talking to him, kind of testing him a little bit. And he's like, oh yeah, come by my gym. I'm like, yeah, cool, I'll be there. You know, got the address, set up a time, went in there being like, oh, I'm gonna mess this dude up. So I went in there and did not go the way I planned. He just gave me a beating. But a beating I deserved, but you know, he didn't knock me out with headshots, knocked me out with liver shots. I was just floored. So I'm like, damn, that guy was he's a lot bigger than me too, obviously, and more experienced. And things I didn't realize he was also a college wrestler.
Yeah.
I thought he was a karate guy. So I was a good wrestler. So I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna take this dude down and beat him up. And I'm shooting on him. He's bigger than me. He's sprawling, body kicking me, and I'm like, oh man, this did not go well. But you know, a lot of guys will take a beating and they'll never come back again because they're egos. But instead, I'm like, will you start teaching me?
Yeah.
And Chuck's not, you know, he's like, oh, I'm training myself, but you can kind of like come along and follow my workouts. So I just started following him around probably pretty much every day, just like showing up where Chuck was, pestering. I'm sure he's probably annoyed in the beginning, but I remember a turning point, maybe 3 months I'd been following him around, and he hit me like a text, or might have been a call back then. He's like, oh, I'm going to Big Bear for a week for a training camp with like Tito Ortiz. The UFC guys had just bought it. And that's when I'm like, oh man, Chuck, at least he doesn't hate me. He's inviting me to go drive up and train with him for a week. So that was great having a mentor like Chuck. Like I said, Chuck was never my trainer because he was focused on himself in that time, but I spent a year just following him around, and he would obviously give me tips, so he's kind of my trainer. So I followed him around for a year, and then I got offered a wrestling scholarship, or partial scholarship at San Francisco State. So I transferred up there, and there was and all the locals. Well, I'd already had a couple fights at that time with Chuck. I started fighting right away.
And so how did that go from there to you meeting the Diaz brothers?
That's when we went to San Francisco. There was the Cesar Gracie. His team was kind of tearing everyone up. So I went. It was like an hour drive from San Francisco. But to me, I was all in on fighting, so I would do whatever it took. You know,
Yeah.
I think people always say you follow your dreams and doing all this, which I agree. But you can't say you're going to follow your dreams and not work your ass off. Guys that do that, they're not willing to do the extra. So for me, there was no doubt that I was going to drive an hour every day to train with the best team. Because you have to, like I said, I wanted to do it, so I followed Chuck and pestered him every day. You have to, if you want to be successful with something, you have to make the steps, Yeah. Yeah, sometimes when I was pestering Chuck, I'm like, oh, he might hate me, but I'm like, you know what, if I want to be great, I'm just going to show up and follow this guy till he kicks me out of the gym or starts helping me. And, he started helping me, and we're still really close friends.
Yeah. So then after you got from, you went to San Francisco, you started fighting in a couple of leagues. And then I know that UFC wasn't like super big back then.
No.
So how did you hear about the UFC?
I started watching UFC in high school. So I think 1993 was the first UFC. I probably watched around 96. And I was just completely hooked, because being a wrestler and the wrestlers are doing so good, it was like, oh, wow, I'm doing a real martial art. I knew I'd won my street fighting, so dominating it. So I was hooked. And so that's why when I met Chuck, and I think it was 99, so a long time ago. So, so I was still in the early days of UFC. It's crazy because, 93 to 96. 93 to 99, that's not far along in the sport.
But you started training, and then you moved from...
out to San Francisco, from Chuck. And then that's when I started training with Nick Diaz.
Yeah.
And David Terrell. So me and Nick were the... there was a lot of good guys at Cesar Gracie's gym. David Terrell, Gil Castillo. They both fought for the UFC title. So me and Nick weren't the two best guys at the gym. We were the two, but we were the two best new guys. So we obviously both had a ton of talent and we were tough and worked hard. So we would get stuck sparring together all the time.
Yeah.
And we became extremely competitive with each other, but in a friendly way, like one of my best friends. But that competitiveness drives you to be great. So we would train, and after a couple months, I brought in, Gil Melendez too. He ended up being a big star.
Yeah.
So I brought him in one day, and then Nick's like, "Oh, I'm gonna bring my brother in, and make him spar with Gil." So then he brought in Nate, and me and Nick would spar, and then we'd make. They were like brand new, and we'd make them like go in there and fight. Yeah. it was savage back in the day.
That reminds me of like when we were kids. I used to live in LA, and we used to go to these little backyard parties, like big Mexican parties.
Yeah.
And then you go to the backyard party, and there'd be all like the uncles gambling in the kitchen table, and like the aunts, everybody's dancing outside, and then in the backyard you'd see all like the uncle, like the cousins and stuff. And it's always these like older tatted dudes, and they were telling all the little kids, "Hey, you and him are gonna fight."
No, that's really kind of how it was. If Nate and Gil hadn't been so successful, I'd feel like I was a child abuser.
No, because
they were like 16.
Yeah, no, they made us fight. So I was one of the fighters. So I actually was like the best fighter when I was a kid. I was like 6'7". You know, my strategy was as 6 years old, 7 years old. I remember all I did was just run, and I was like, "That's it." And I would run and close my eyes and just start swinging. And I apparently. I'm gonna make this short as possible because I want to make this
go.
But the funniest part is that he goes, there was this one kid, he was like 11 or 10. He's like super tall, blonde kid, and then like me, I'm tiny, and he goes, and they're like, "Are you a man or a mouse?" And I'm like, "I'm a man." And then he goes, "Are you a man or a mouse?" And the other kid's like, "I'm a mouse. I'm a mouse."
Like, yeah, I got this.
Yeah. So going back to that, so that culture, right? Like coming into fighting from that culture, for me, it was really about not being bullied, not being, not having anybody like get their number on me, because I didn't want to ever feel weak. Like for me, growing up a small guy, I was like insecure about it.
Yeah.
And you notice this in a lot of the UFC and the other guys. Like they're some of the most like confident guys you see out of these like short UFC guys, because they know what they can. They know already, and then they don't have to prove themselves to anybody. So it kind of gets rid of that like need.
Yeah.
But for you, what was the reason that you wanted to get involved so deeply into this as a career, like as a lifestyle?
Man, that's a good question, because it doesn't really make any sense. But as soon as I started training, I was just completely hooked and absorbed. Like I said, I think it's the ADD mind. I'll just get obsessed with things, and it's like all I wanted to do. And every single person was telling me not to, and I can't blame them. Your families, there was no money in the sport at the time, even like the top guys were maybe making like 40,000, 50,000 a fight.
Yeah.
But I was just so obsessed, I couldn't stop doing it. So and I figured there would be a way to make money out of it eventually. I was thinking there was no real money fighting, but like teaching, I was just so addicted. It's what I wanted to do. And so when you want to do something that bad, you have to just follow it. Yeah. Like I said, if you want to do something bad too, you got to work your ass off. So we trained really hard. And in our gym, we developed a really good, tough culture at our gym, because most of these powerhouse gyms, everyone moves there to train. I believe we're the only homegrown gym that's had so many successful fighters out of it. Like, we've never recruited, we've never went and got people, and we've had like, multiple world titles out of our champ. At one point, me, Nick Diaz, and Gil Melendez were all the Strikeforce champions. Nate Diaz obviously is Nate Diaz. We just got David Terrell fought for the UFC title. It's just because we were a homegrown team, and we had such an attitude of just like always being tougher, never quit, never backing down. So when other people would want to come in and spar us, we didn't want to embarrass each other. Even when we sparred each other, it was like, we didn't hurt each other, but we went hard. Yeah. Perfect example is going back to like this is popped my head back in the kids fighting. I remember like one time some tattooed up Mexican dude comes in, probably out of prison, wants to like, we had a few of these back in the day. You don't get this anymore. Wants to fight someone. And then Nick's like, "Nate, you got to get him." And Nate's like 16, I think. But Nate, he's probably a lot more scared of Nick than he is this guy. So he just acts all cool. Really, in his mind, he's probably going, "Oh fuck!" So starts putting his gloves on, but won't show an ounce of fear, because he's more scared of like me and Nick like getting mad at him. He just goes and whoops the dude though, because Nate, he was one of those phenoms at 16. He was beating the crap out of grown men, and it's like, oh, we're like, wow, this kid's gonna be good. You mean you're talking about Nate? Nate Diaz, yeah. For me, I mean, a big thing that I want to ask you is about your fight with GSP. That was, even though I lost it, it's still one of my more memorable fights, because GSP's a guy I admired for years. I'd always wanted him. I'd always wanted to fight him, and that That fight was absolutely insane. I've been to hundreds of fights,
Yeah.
and that's out of all the fights I've been to, including other people's, that's like the top 2 or 3 most hype fights I've ever been to. So it's weird to be the main event on a fight with that kind of hype.
Yeah.
When I showed up into Canada, it was like, whoa. There was posters of us everywhere. We couldn't walk down the streets. It was at a 60,000 seat arena, completely sold out.
Yeah.
And like people were fighting to get tickets, and like every single bar was showing it walking
GSP
out.
was so big.
It
though.
was he was a superstar, and it was tough too because they wanted to just book me up with media all day leading up to it, late night, morning. I'm cutting weight. It was a lot of stress.
And how much weight did you have to cut for that?
Think about 17, 18 pounds, which is about standard, but it's still really hard.
Yeah.
It's like when you say standard, it's still a really tough thing.
Yeah.
And they're putting you like 7, 8 hours media a day on top of it, and everywhere you go, you're getting swarmed. It was a lot of pressure. And it's
what do you walk around at?
now I'm probably about 195.
Yeah, and then you were cutting in that fight was at 170.
170. So I usually walk around about 190, and then I'll try to get like a couple pounds lower before I drop the water.
So then, okay, so fighting GSP, dude, I know. I mean, you took some crazy shots, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is the first thing that you noticed? What's the biggest thing you remember from that?
Well, first let's go back to the walking out. Because the regular arena in the U.S. is about 12,000 people. She walking out to 60,000 people. That was the largest attendance ever for a fight at the time. I think it's been passed up by one fight since. So when you're walking out with 60,000 people, it is insane.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm being the bad guy, being American. Not Canadian fans are bad, but 60,000 people booing you, it's kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I just look up kind of like in shock, but it's but then I go, GSP's about to have to do the same thing. They're going to be cheering him, but that's going to put the same stress because he's enough pressure. So I'm like, all right, get my head back together, calm down. And then I just really went in there. GSP's good, man. He's hard to read. He's hard to find.
Yeah.
And usually punches don't hurt that bad. But I remember just walking into his first jab, because everyone always criticizes his power, but he has this crazy snap. Usually don't walk you down, but his first jab just stung my head so bad.
You staggered back.
I think he hit me with a jab like so heavy. I was like, damn, this is hard getting through his timing. It's like I said, it ended up being a close fight. I lost the first 3 rounds and then won the last 2. So it's so part of me is like, man, could I have pushed harder? Did I not go crazy enough those rounds? I felt like I started putting the pressure on him. He's phenomenal.
He's unique though. I think that's what it was, right? Like the guy would find the weirdest angle and just come in exact. He was so precise.
Yeah, he does this like where he comes up and does a Superman punch,
or his kick,
really
his straight
his kick,
karate kick,
changes angles, kicks, an amazing takedown, amazing. It's so hard to get the timing of him, and he's hard to take down. I think he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest fighter of all time. So to go out there and, even though I lost, I didn't feel bad about myself to go in there and have
you went all 5 rounds.
Yeah, and his face looked a lot worse than mine.
Yeah, you actually put damage on him.
I think I legitimately lost the fight, but a lot of people always tell me, oh, you won because you looked worse. That's not how it's judged, though.
Yeah.
But people all the time be like, oh, you won that fight. He was all messed up, you weren't. But that's just not how fights are judged.
Yeah.
You judge individual rounds, and he won 3 rounds. I look back, and I definitely think he won 3, I won 2. But I mean, he hadn't lost a round, I think, in multiple years at that time. So to go and pull 2 rounds, I didn't feel bad about myself. But of course, there was some doubt in my head, like, what if I would have pushed a little harder? What if I would have gone crazy in the 3rd round? So it eats you up a little bit, but ultimately, I can't be ashamed by that performance.
But you could have gone crazy, and then you could have found an opening, right? So.
Yeah, or he might kick me in the face. So you just don't know, man. It's hard. And like I said, it's easy to criticize after why I didn't walk forwards. But when that jab's so strong, like people understand, like that jab GSP has is world class. It just pops you backwards. Where like normal jabs don't hurt, but that thing hits you and you're like, oh damn, I can't it's hard to walk through it.
Yeah. What do you think about the Tyron Woodley fight you had?
That was another tough one. It was
because he kicked you with leg kick.
Couple leg kicks, yeah. Not too much. People say he has big shots, but nothing really hurt. He was I think I'd grappled him like a year before, and I tapped him much time, so he was really being wary to avoid the ground. So he's staying a little super low, backing up. So it's kind of a frustrating fight for me because I couldn't take him down. And he has a lot more power than me, but I just had to be. I was just a lot more active, throwing a lot of punches, staying in his face, shooting, trying to stay him down. I was just able to outwork him. Like I said, it was a tough fight for me because he was being defensive, not trying to give the takedown. down, which was a smart strategy. And he is a huge power puncher, so I had to be careful. But luckily, luckily nothing really hit me that heavy. Most of the glance, I think he hit me like one spinning back fist, but I was like, oh, it looked beautiful, but didn't really hurt. So
between you and the Diaz brothers, I mean, that whole team, you guys go super hard all the time.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do you manage in a fight the mental fatigue?
I think because we train a lot hard in the training, we're used to that hard push. So you go out there and just push, and it's tough, man. Fighting is a tough sport. There's so many factors. You might be having a tough time in life. You might be sick that day. The weight cut might have gone wrong. That's why it's almost impossible for guys to stay undefeated in MMA. There's different style matchups, so there's nothing tougher than fighting. There really isn't. No, that's why it's literally the most raw sport you can do, getting in a cage and fighting another human. And I've been a little off subject, but I've been saying recently that they should make high school kids they could add some rules, make it more amateur style, bigger gloves. They should make them do a fight every year, like in their PE class, give them like a 2-month training. Like imagine first off, just the training for that would make them tougher, and just the mental skill of going in there and having to fight someone in a cage, just the fear of that. It's not just the fear of getting hurt, it's the fear of getting embarrassed, Yeah. We have millions of people watching. You imagine getting knocked out with millions of people watching, and plus we lose half our money. It's just, I think it's so good for you learning. Everything else in life seems easy once you deal with the stress of going to those type of fights.
So when you, currently we've got like a pretty interesting roster. Do you have who do you like right now a lot?
Well, first off, I'm training a couple fighters. I have the Basharat brothers. They're 2 and 35-pounders they moved out here from England. They're originally from Afghanistan, born out there. They're phenomenal fighters. I think one's 12 or 13-0, and the other one's like 15-1. Unfortunately, he just lost I thought he won his last fight, but lost a really close fight, and I think they both got potential to be champions, And I also train a guy, Patchy Mix, who's a Bellator 135-pound champion. He's also phenomenal.
Black dude?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I've seen him before.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah.
Taps everyone out. And then I kind of work with a bunch of other people, but training's more something I do because I love the sport. So I'm not like chasing guys down, trying to train them. Like I go to the gym a lot and I help guys out, but I wouldn't say I'm their trainer.
Yeah. Where are you training out of?
Mostly Extreme Couture and the PI a little bit.
Here in Vegas, right?
Yeah, here in Vegas.
Yeah.
It's just I just love it. It's a way to keep me around the sport. Like I said, there's not a lot of money in training unless you're either training a ton of guys or you have like some Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz guys you're training. And I've helped train Nate for fights. We have a deal because we were a team. We all cornered each other for free for all of our careers. So instead of paying each other out, we all helped train each other. We all cornered each other for free, which made a lot more sense instead of always paying each other for,
So what do you think about the big stardom right now with Sean, right? Like Sugar Sean.
Honestly, I wasn't a fan of his in the beginning. He's not quite my style.
Yeah.
But he's earned my respect. He had a really padded record coming up, so he was fighting guys that weren't that good, so he was looking spectacular. But his last couple opponents, he's beaten some good guys. So I can't not respect him now. The Cheeto, he picked him apart. He knocked out black guy. He just knocked out Aljamain Sterling. I think he had a big win before that.
Peter Yan.
Yeah, so there you go. So now he's had some legit wins. So I cannot criticize him anymore. Yeah. I can still say his style is not quite my thing, but he's never been disrespectful to me. I actually saw him after the Miami fight, went and shook his hand, said, "Hey, you earned my respect." I told him because before he wasn't a guy I had a huge respect for. Yeah. So it's like he's earned my respect.
So do all these guys, do they look up to you like you're like a OG of the
a lot do, some don't. It depends. There's different generations. So a lot of I get a ton of respect from a ton of the guys always come up, be like, "Oh man, I love you so much." So I get a ton of respect from the young guys.
Yeah.
But then different ones, different generations. So not all of them, but definitely a lot of them give me massive respect, which is really cool. But then I think about it, I'm like, it's weird how much respect to give me. But I think about it, I see someone like Mark Coleman, and I'm like, Mark, I get so excited because these are the guys, and then he gets happy because he's like, "Oh, you like me that much?" And like, bro, you're the guy I grew up watching. I love you, Mark. Yeah. Which Mark almost just died in a saving his parents from a fire. I don't know if you heard about that, but thankfully he pulled through. And guys so some of these guys most people don't even know nowadays are like the guys I look to, because like I said, the guys when you're like a kid that you watch, those are the guys you idolize. It's just something about that differently that you can't kick it.
Yeah.
So I see these guys and I get like starstruck, even though like I'm a bigger name than some of these guys. And it's like, oh, it's Don Fry. And I get like all excited.
Yeah.
And,
Well, Don Fry's a G though.
yeah, but I think these guys like it too, and they get the guys that the next generation of stars. And I get that quite a bit. The young stars coming up all excited to hang out, and it does feel good when you get someone who's like a big star and they come up and they're all like starstruck, like, oh my god, Jake Shields, and this guy's like a bigger star than me now. It's like, oh, this is cool.
So what happens when someone, okay, this has only happened one time that I've seen, but someone, some guy, okay, you and Twitter got in an argument, and then you ended up saying, I'm going to see you around.
Yeah.
And the guy actually just kept talking shit.
Yeah.
Right? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, this is the guy Mike Jackson.
Yeah.
We both verbally agreed to fight each other on Twitter. He just randomly came out of nowhere calling me a racist, which is absurd. Everyone I'm around is like of all different races. I don't give a fuck about races. I might make racist jokes and bullshit with my friend because I'm not racist. But like the funny thing is, this guy's one quarter black, 3/4 white. He grew up in a town. I looked up his town. He grew up playing lacrosse. That's some white shit. I didn't have lacrosse in my school, so I think he like went to college and then got like this like guilt and decided he was some. He got this big black power tattoo and started talking everything about race and started like talking shit on white people constantly. So basically I told him, all right, go, are we allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah.
So I told him, go fuck yourself, when you go, yeah, I'll fight you when I see you, blah, blah. Try and act like he's some gangbanger. I'm just like, bro, you're so fucking fake. I grew up around real gangbangers and shit, and I knew some of these black pride and white pride and Mexican pride gangs. They don't act like this.
Yeah.
I could actually go hang out with these black pride gangs and be treated good, and brown pride gangs because I got respect. This dude would get killed so quick. He's gonna get killed if he's not careful, either by a white gang or a black gang, because he's disrespecting the black gangs pushing that black pride shit too when he's not, Yeah. But anyways, I seen him in the gym and I'm like, oh, what up? Finally, I see you here. And then he goes, oh no, bro, let's fight in Houston. I'm like, bro, we agreed to fight. What are you talking about? And then he's like backing up, and then he kind of starts like kind of backing up, running away. So I'm like, oh, whatever. Some guys grab me. I'm like, oh, whatever. And then he goes, yeah, that's what I thought, you punk Nazi bitch. So the guys that were holding me, they didn't know what was going on. So
they just let go.
So they let go. The funny thing is, like, black guys, he's calling me his race. I have a couple of my black friends are holding me. So they let me go. I grab him, throw him on the ground, start slapping him in the face.
Yeah. How many, what is it, like 3 slaps?
Yeah, it's probably good they pulled me off because I probably would have just kept slapping him forever. And he's like, help me. This guy's a pro fighter. We fight the same weight. He's currently fighting. He's like begging for help. So the guys pull me off. And then afterwards he goes and gives some rant calling like, saying I'm the racist so-and-so. Not that it matters, but he's there with all white people. I was there with like a couple Muslims, 2 black people.
Yeah.
And then he called this guy Dewey Cooper, who's a OG, amazing stand-up trainer. Black, he's like kind of the old school black pride. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's like kind of a really proud black man, which I have no problem with black pride if you're respectful. I'm white, he's black. We completely respect each other. We work together all the time.
Right.
He can be black pride all he wants. He doesn't disrespect white people. And this guy goes, because, this guy's like a black pride guy, he's like, I was so disappointed that Dewey didn't come in and hit Jake for me. Dewey's my friend.
Yeah.
Dewey saw that interview. He was just like, I think he basically called him like an Uncle Tom and stuff. Dewey's just like, what the fuck, dude? Younger me would go and beat the shit out of this dude. That's what he don't understand. He's like, dissing black guys like that, saying because he's 1/4 black, my black friend should jump in and kick me. It's just a weird, crazy logic,
Okay, so I want to switch this to an interesting topic. So you were recently on Fresh and Fit.
Yeah.
You've actually been on there a few times, and you actually had like a couple viral clips because of your red pill. You're not your red pill, but how do I say this? You are like you become like a voice, kind of like a little bit of a red pill voice.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? Like, how did that start?
Okay, I get confused with the term red pill. Is that like the
I guess
the
it's
women,
just like
right?
the guys who are
because
like
I'm not exactly that, because I feel like the red pill guys are kind of negative towards
more
women.
extreme, negative,
and I'm really in the middle because I think there's a bunch of amazing women out there. I don't think it's that hard to find good women. I also think there's a bunch of trash women out there.
Yeah.
So I think some of the red pill guys, I could be
kind of like
this term's new to me, but I feel like they kind of think all women are trash.
Yeah.
And I think if all the women you run into are trash, maybe you're trash.
Yeah.
If you're a good person,
you're attracting good.
If you're a good
in your
person,
life.
you're going to attract good women. They're going to listen to you. You have to be like a strong, dominant man. And when I say that, I don't mean mean. People get the lines blurred, but I think it's a man's job to lead the woman, be strong, make most of the decisions, you don't bully them. You still want to get their output. I think if you act like that, you're not going to have girls aren't going to be treating you like crap.
Yeah.
I think these guys are maybe doing things. There are certainly girls that are trash, but you got to learn to have like, you know, I don't anymore, but when I was, you know, at peak my fame, I slept around quite a bit and really learned women's psychology. So I think I understand it much, much better than most people. And I think a lot of what girls say they're looking for and what they're actually looking for is completely different. I think a lot of guys are unaware of that.
You were talking about this, and then I noticed it was kind of like you had like you just kind of went off on that whole topic. So what's your are you currently, actually I don't know, are you currently single or dating?
I like to keep my dating life private because I have like 2 people that hate me and stuff right now. I just don't want, you see all these guys getting their girlfriends dragged dragged into shit, and I'm way too controversial, so I just
do you worry about that? Like, do you ever worry about stuff that could come from Twitter? Because right now...
Yeah, I definitely don't want family dragged into anything, and I'm getting like death threats. Some of them might be legitimate, you know, especially with some of the Zionist things that they seem like some people that legitimately want to kill me.
Yeah, I saw that. So some guy put your name. He was putting missiles and putting your name on.
Yeah, that guy's a freaking coward. I know him. He's another fake fighter. But we're getting guys being like, "Oh, we're gonna have Mossad come and visit you," and you know they all have they do spy in the U.S. There's definitely records of all the ADL spying, the APAC spying. So it gets a little scary. You know, I'm sure these guys are legitimately trying to find dirt on me. When you speak against these powerful people that have infiltrated our company and work with the FBI, it gets a little scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a whole different. It's a whole different thing right now with the way that especially Twitter allowing things and not allowing things, but being the most free speech platform right now, according to, you know, free speech.
It's really not the most free speech though. Perfect example as I put out, you know, Jewish people brought terrorism to the Middle East. And I want to be clear, I shouldn't even have to say this, but I have lots of Jewish friends. I shouldn't have to do this claim, blah, blah. I'm not anti-Semitic, but it's bullshit they even have to say it. But the truth of the matter is a lot of people don't know that the Jewish people are the ones that brought terrorism to the Middle East. They went there doing terrorist attacks early on. They bombed the King David Hotel, killing 90-something people. It was the largest attack the world had ever seen until multiple years later. They were kidnapping English soldiers and hanging them. They executed the negotiator out there. They tried to execute, I believe, President Taft. They were doing massive terrorism out there. And so they're the ones that literally brought terrorism in there. So I posted that with news clips and articles, and then I got in trouble on Twitter for that.
I think there was a couple of other things that you were actually talking about that was really interesting. How about just currently, like more on the humanitarian aid front, right? Like just posting like what's going on with the supplies and
yeah, I'm on a bunch of Telegram channels from there, and I only post a very few videos. The shit I see is just it's fucked up.
Yeah, like
every day, hundreds of
focus.
videos I see every day. So I only post 1 or 2 because you can't just
because I think
people can't see all this. It's just too brutal. The stuff
extreme,
I see.
and
it's extreme.
Yeah, I saw a video of a girl walking around and her eye was hanging out of her face, and it's really disturbing. But I think majority of Muslims right now are focused on and more interested in actually just getting the help that they can to these people.
Yeah, they're killing people that are getting food. It's just like absolutely sick. They're waiting for food, and there've been a couple of them now where they massacre them. Could you imagine, like, you're the father out getting food for your children, and then you get killed, and there's no one. You know, your wife and kids are waiting back, and then people in the U.S. are defending this, and they're trying to say it's not happening. I literally have hundreds of videos on my phone of it happening. Like I said, I don't post that many of them, but I see it every day. It's hard to watch it sometimes. Some days I'm like, oh, I need to I can't go look through this. It's just like kid after kid, arms blown off, kids crying because they lost their parents. You're just seeing this. I've never seen such horrors in my life, and I'm just disgusted that so many people are supporting this on both sides, in particular the Republican Party. They're all just paid for and controlled, by a different subject, but the Jewish lobby, AIPAC, completely trolls all of our American politicians, which technically is illegal. Foreign lobbies interfering is illegal, but it's not enforced. Yeah.
So and I remember when you were on the Dean show 3 months ago, a lot has happened since then, and it's like I know you actually were super up to date on the numbers. Do you know the numbers right now?
Man, they're so staggering. I can't even keep up. I remember like a few weeks ago, it was like 15,000 children dead, they were saying. And maybe like, I think it was like over 30,000 women and children. I think it's over 40,000. I don't know the numbers. It just keeps adding up. And it's just so staggering. I had to stop following. It just gets so depressing, being a father, seeing just these dead children. And then you get conservatives trying to be like, oh, they're fake videos and this and that.
How could you fake? Did you see the video of the guy who burned himself?
Yeah, that was pretty.
That was
pretty gnarly. I mean, obviously, I think that's a stupid thing to do,
that's
but it just
extreme,
showed him.
Yeah, that's an extreme.
But it showed he had strong feelings and convictions, and I think it was dumb he did that. But it, maybe it would make a statement. You believe strong enough, and the guy stood, yelling "Free Palestine" as he was fucking burning to death.
That's pretty strong. Yeah,
I like that. I'm like, damn, that's some serious pain.
Tough,
so
yeah.
I mean,
tough.
He went out with his beliefs.
Yeah. So right now with everything that's going on, let's go back to a little bit of how. So I heard on there you were saying you would consider fighting if you would if you had like a comeback, if something, if there was like a fight that interests you.
Yeah, I still train every day. I'm in good shape.
Yeah.
I just I train with like top pros all the time and do really well. So I would fight. Like I still love fighting. The thing is, I had a 20-year career and has an extremely successful career, so it only makes sense for me to go back if it's like an interesting name and a good money. So it's just stupid for me to go. I get offers all the time, and occasionally decent money, to like, oh, go fight some guy in Russia that no one's ever heard of. They're trying to make a name of me. It just doesn't make sense. But if it's a good name and a good opponent, I would. If Nate Diaz does, he's doing a boxing fight next, unfortunately. But if he did an MMA card, I would love to jump on there and him. Imagine if we got him and Gil Melendez on the card, the return of the scrap pack. Unfortunately, Nick's under contract with UFC, but how cool would that be? The return of the scrap pack on a card.
Going back into fighting and your currently current events, all the YouTube boxing that's been pretty big. So and then Logan Paul, Jake Paul. I know you a lot of people have heard your opinions about this. My question is, what about obviously the big thing right now is Mike Tyson versus Jake. And what do you think of all this YouTube boxing? One, do you think it's good or bad for the sport? And then two, what do you think the outcome of that fight's going to be?
I think YouTube boxing is great for the sport. I know a lot of fighters probably aren't going to like me saying that, but I think it's great for the sport. It brings more people watching. It's getting a lot of these young YouTube kids wanting to train and do fighting. It's got people like Sneako trying to train. It's got people actually wanting to learn to fight and better themselves. And it's bringing a lot of money in. My friend Nate Diaz made a lot of money off it. It's So overall, I think it's great. I know a lot of people hate on that and like, oh, it's cheesy, it's lame. But man, it's bringing people in, it's bringing eyeballs, it's getting kids motivated in it because it's a completely different crowd than our fight crowd. So yeah, it's great. Yeah. And the Tyson Jake Paul fight, I mean, I don't love it, but I'm gonna watch it. Yeah. It's free. Tyson's gonna be 58 and he's a legend.
I think honestly, I just think people underestimate how much age will do.
58 is just it's one thing like. I'm 45 now and I still feel really tough, but it's like that's more than 10 years off, and it's different too because Tyson's a speed fighter and he's gonna be a little slower, and there's gonna be the conditioning. Tyson could maybe get an early knockout, but I just don't think he's gonna have that speed he used to have, and his power came from his speed. Yeah. If you watch Tyson in his early 20s, I don't know if you ever go watch much Tyson in his early 20s and bads. That guy could fight, dude.
He's swing. The crazy thing is the way he pendulum swings. Mm-hmm. So quickly. Can you do that? I can't.
No, I don't think no one can.
I've never seen anybody do that. Like
he
completely swung his whole and he was 100 and what was he at that point? Like
light 190. It was the only 190.
Yeah, he was like 190, 200, but still it's a lot.
He wasn't a huge heavyweight, and he was just flooring people.
And he was just. I mean, he would pendulum. Everybody's a huge fan of Mike. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's not. I think Mike applied correctly. Would have, and there's the old long Muhammad Ali versus Mike. I think he applied correctly would have beaten Muhammad Ali, but I think that
probably right in his very peak. I think he unfortunately didn't have as long of a peak as he should have because Customata, his trainer, died, and then he kind of spun out of control.
Yeah, and then Atlas and his he had a situation that whatever happened with Atlas and some girl or something. I don't know.
I think something with his daughter.
Something happened.
I think he almost shot him or something.
Yeah, he was mad, and nobody knows what really happened. Yeah. But the last thing was that what was I gonna say? That going back on Ali. Mm-hmm. Ali actually, I think in his prime, people underestimate because the footage is so old.
Yeah.
And you can't really see. Like the guy was so lean, but so
the way
big
he-
at the same
yeah.
time. And he just like he had like that perfect like shape for like these long like
punches.
long punches that were really just like connect.
And his head movement was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't suck that we can't take Tyson Prime and Ali
Yeah.
Prime and put them together.
Yeah.
What a main event that would be.
Dude, I mean, so Ali versus Tyson, who you got then in their prime?
I hate picking these type of things, but
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That would be amazing to watch though. I
Yeah.
know that.
That'd be an incredible fight. I think if it goes more than 2 rounds, I'd give it to Ali. But if you know, obviously if Mike's
Yeah, because Tyson was just putting people down right away.
Yeah.
There also wasn't a lot of people for him to fight at that time, but he was just murdering people.
Yeah, I think if you don't see a knockout by round 3, Ali versus Tyson, then it's got to be good. It's gonna go to
I think if
Ali.
Cus D'Amato would have lived another 5 years, it would have been a different Tyson.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. That's like I remember I saw you talking about that on another podcast, and I was like, I agree completely. Because the way that Cus and Mike, like you see their old interviews, and the way that they bonded, like he just wanted to make him proud, and like that's a different level of drive.
It was proud and fear. It was
Yeah.
both. I read his book. He was scared of him and he wanted to make him proud. It was like his father figure, but he was mean too.
Yeah.
This guy was mean, but his job was to make Tyson a killer, and he did. And I got to hang out with Teddy Atlas recently too, which is really cool. I watched the UFC with him, you know, and I was explaining all the different fight things to him, and then he invited me to come watch boxing with him. I really need to take him up on that because we were texting for a minute. And like, how cool would it be to go watch some fights with Teddy Atlas, breaking down all the? He goes, he'll see things I won't, obviously.
Yeah.
Like I see things in MMA, he won't, and he's going to see completely things that I'm not seeing in boxing. His level is so, it's so cool to watch fights with a complete expert like that can break things down.
It's so crazy that you could be in it your whole life, and then another person could be in it in their whole life, but you could see 2 totally different perspectives just because they're only focused solely on the upper body. That's how complex
Exactly.
it is. Like the minute shift of this and the minute shift of like the elevation and the angle that you come in, and that could make all the difference.
Yeah, like him, he's such an amazing trainer, you know. So that's like I said, I need. It's reminding me after this. I need to hit him up after this. And be like, let's
you
hang
said
out
it
again.
twice on 2 podcasts. You got to do it now.
No, I think it was Fresh and Fit. 'Cause I remembered it then.
Yeah,
Was it
you
then?
got it.
Because I remember hanging out with Teddy and being like, oh, how cool was it watching fights with him? And
Dude, Teddy
and thinking
would
how
be-
bad I want to go watch boxing with him and have him. We could watch old fights too and break down. It'd be cool, just 'cause I've never watched with good boxers, but never sitting broken down boxing footage.
Do you have a
with masters.
podcast?
No, I don't. Maybe one day. Everyone's
should.
mentioned it. Maybe I
You
should.
could-
Yeah.
Yeah. So women in sports or men in women's sports.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how this is. I'm a Muslim. I'm gonna stick by my faith. We believe that a man is a man, a woman is a woman.
Yes.
And if you have anything outside of that, then that's kind of more of like a you gotta really do your own digging on. I don't know the exacts of what that is, but it's not. There's no other way in Islam. We don't think
you
of
can't
that.
just switch your gender.
Yeah, like
It's-
it's more of like a and like I know people and I'm like chill with people that have all kinds of different opinions, and I have no problem with it. I just think that if you have a personal belief, as long as I'm not going to infringe upon your belief, but then if you can't come back and say, but we could allow children to get surgery and they're a child. Like I don't agree with that because they're a child.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
that's-
there's the whole thing is insane. Like you said, I think it's like
when you're an adult, make the choice,
just
right?
in the face of God too, to say you're not you're a man or a woman, you're not accepting what you are. But again, I'm not going to hate someone if they want to like dress like a woman,
Right,
And,
yeah.
and
That's a
you know,
choice.
And I'll call her Sally or him or whatever he wants, but I'm not going to pretend like it's a real woman. That's where I draw the line. I'm not going to be like, no, I think you're a woman. And that's what they want you to do. They want you to be like, I actually think you're a woman. It's like, no, I don't think it's a woman. I think it's a man in a dress. I'll be polite to them as long as they're not like creepy. But it's there's so many things they're trying to do that doesn't make sense. And it's just, no one really agrees with this. It's about maybe 1 or 2% of the population.
Yeah,
I lived in San Francisco and New York, the most liberal cities.
Yeah.
And I have outspoken views. So my friends in private would all tell me they agree. So we'd be in the same group of like 15 people, and 7 or 8 of them in private would be privately saying it, but they wouldn't say it in public. They're all just like scared, cowardly, because they think that's what everyone thinks. But no one believes that like men should be in women's sports. It's
Yeah, that's what I was
absolutely
gonna-
it's absolutely ludicrous.
Right.
It's like as an athlete, the difference is just so big. It's like
Huge.
if I spar a girl, I'm there playing. I'm not like, I'm
not
letting her
serious.
hit me. I'm gonna touch her. I'm not gonna. The difference is so big, and that's why people hate domestic violence. That's why people get mad at wife beaters, because they know the difference is so big, and that poor girl has no chance.
Yeah.
But we're letting men come in and beat up women in sports and calling them heroes.
And calling it okay.
Showtime's making a film about one of these people trying to make him into a hero. They've interviewed me being the bad guy for it. We'll see how it edits up, because the producers had clearly never even thought about it when they interviewed me. So I'll be curious how they cut that up, because I just completely smoked the
they
producers.
probably did not even do their research. to
No,
be
they were
honest.
just like,
let's just make something controversial.
yeah, they were just like baffled when I was picking them apart, like how ridiculous it was. And the kids, it's just disgusting. They're taking these poor kids that are vulnerable. When you're a teen and a young teen, you go through a lot of people go through these tough stages. Their hormones are having a hard time fitting in, and it gives them an identity.
Yeah.
And it's happening actually a lot more with women, I've noticed. And I think it's happening to a lot of autistic women too. So they're taking advantage of it. These girls that are autistic, a lot of them are autistic, they're not fitting in. It'll happen in groups of friends. So there'll be like 5 friends and they all become trans. And most of these girls will probably snap out of it in a year. But some of them, these doctors start pressing them to get their breasts cut off, get on testosterone.
Yeah.
They're ruining lives. These doctors should be
And
arrested.
these are kids. How old are they?
Well, some are teens, but there's like 3 or 4 year olds doing it. That's obviously the parent.
You don't think for yourself.
And I don't, it's terrible. And I don't know what age they can start giving the drugs on and stuff, but it's definitely under 18.
But any drug already in general, you should be over 18 when you start taking like even certain prescriptions, you have to
Testosterone and estrogen are extremely serious, heavy drugs.
Yeah.
And they're giving this to teenagers like nothing because they want to switch sex. Even like if you talk to a bodybuilder, they'll be like, oh, never do steroids until you're like 22 or 23. These are like the most steroid abuser guys in the world.
Dude, 23, you got to be like 50, I feel like.
No, you probably should, but these are bodybuilders that do this for a living. I'm talking about these guys that are steroided out of their minds.
Yeah.
They'll tell when teens ask them to do steroids, they'll be like, no, absolutely not. And they're giving it to like 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it's so unhealthy for the kids. It's something, the older you get, maybe you could, but you have so much, it's baffling. Everything about it is just, it's being pushed from somewhere in our societies. No one really believes it, but our media is making it act like we do.
Yeah. Well, I knew there was going to be a lot when I was going to interview you. It was going to be a bunch of different directions.
Yeah.
But dude, you got like a web sphere of influence and things that you're doing that it's a kind of actually, I think most of it's pretty solid, things that people need to hear. And then,
I think people think I'm a lot more controversial than I am. But I think it's a small amount of people that think I'm extremely controversial.
Yeah,
Most people,
I don't think it's.
This is one of the things that I've gotten death threats over and stuff. My view on trans people is like, no, I don't hate trans people. I just don't think that a trans man should be in a woman's prison where they might rape them.
Yeah.
I don't think they should be in women's locker rooms. And it's what keeps happening. They say it's all innocent when they're jerking off and stuff. A lot of these guys, it's a sexual perversion for them. Maybe not all, but a lot of them, it's a sexual perversion. It's a way to go in the women's locker rooms. It's like, if you have like daughters and stuff, do you want some dude walking in the bathroom with my little daughter? That's just like, I'm not okay with that at all.
Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you one thing about UFC. So with the UFC, I just have a big, for me, I've always just disliked the level of which people cut weight. What's your opinion on weight cutting?
I mean, I absolutely hate it. It's the worst part of the sport, and I wish we could do away with it. But the problem is, how do we do away with it? It's very, very difficult because average people are cutting about 20 pounds to weight. So let's say I decide, I'm not going to cut weight. That means I'm fighting someone 20 pounds bigger than me.
Yep.
So if I go, I used to cut down. I fought some at 85, but I'd mostly cut down to 170 and walk in around 195. But then I fought a few fights up at 185, and I bulked up a little bit, so I'd maybe walk in a little over 190, and the guys would be coming in 210, sometimes 215. Sheesh. So they're just bigger guys. So it's like, and I mean, obviously if the guy's not trained, the weight doesn't make a difference, but we're talking about, I'm fighting literally the best fighters in the world.
Yeah.
So you're fighting the best fighters in the world, that 15, 20
weight,
pounds makes a difference. So you're kind of, they brainstorm ways to get rid of it, but it's tough.
Have you ever seen Pereira's without Pereira when he's natural?
Huge. He's huge, and he fought 85s, and he looks like he's 230.
Yeah, dude.
That's what I'm saying. So if I fought my natural weight, I'd be fighting someone like that.
Dude, that's insane. And the guy's I mean, he was standing next to who was it? I think it was like Jack Hermanson or something like that, and he was doing a catch weight wrestling bout, and he looked bigger than him. And it was like 15 pounds higher, you know?
I think he moved up to 205s actually because he was just so big for that weight.
Yeah, I don't know how he cut too. And I think that some of these guys are getting away with like some kind of steroid usage.
Or diuretics can pull the water out.
I mean, so here's the question. How do guys like, I mean, honestly, you know, Joe's average response is, there's just some guys who are genetic freaks.
Yeah.
I'm like, Joe, I love you, but there's definitely some guys that I think are using gear.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to name any names.
Oh, no names.
I know a lot of guys, but I agree with you. I think when USADA first came in, everyone shrunk up. Not everyone, but a lot of guys. It looked like very few guys run gear.
Yeah.
But then I noticed, especially a lot of these big teams, guys started getting jacked again. Their cardio started getting good. So maybe they're running EPO. And I personally don't have any knowledge to this personal knowledge. I'm just saying what I've seen because I'm not just going to go and ask people, hey, are you guys on drugs? Even though I'm around these people.
No, I'm just saying you could see a couple guys.
There's definitely people, probably more than a couple, that look like they're doing stuff.
And also if they're in another country, right? Like, no, not to name any specifics, but if they're in another country, like you can never, it's a lot harder. I think that
was a big problem with USADA. They were constantly testing the US, but they weren't going and testing in Russia and Brazil. And also some of these countries might have, they might have state doping programs where they just they're making designer drugs they can't detect for.
Yeah,
I think is what they can do in some cases. Some of these super gyms, I'm just speculating here, so I'm not accusing anyone of doing this, but they can hire a really good chemist, take these same drugs, slightly change the compounds, and they won't show up on the tests.
Yeah,
so that's what I think might be going on.
Did you hear about the news that Sneako just got? Well, I mean,
86 from the UFC.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like heavily involved in all that scenario. I have one of my Muslim fighters, Javed Basharat, and Sneako's a Muslim. So I'm like, Sneako hit me up wanting to train. I go, yeah, let's train, but you come work out with my guy Javed too, because he's phenomenal and he'll be a great crossover for your audience since you have a lot of Muslims following you. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So he came in to work out with me and Javed was the plan. And I picked him up in the morning, we're driving in, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm going sparring Sean Strickland. I go, wait, what? No, you're not sparring Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? No, that's not going to happen. And he's like, oh, I already agreed to. So I'm like, I go, all right, this guy's going to hurt you though. So I go, just go out there, fight your best.
Yeah.
The only good thing is, he's probably going to get viral, way more viral than I thought. And I go, and if you choose to fight him, take it like a man. Don't bitch, which he didn't. He never said never.
No, he did. He
said never said anything negative.
Stayed up.
He didn't fall down. He didn't criticize Sean. So I think he actually gained from it quite a bit. I think he gained some respect. Even Sean goes, I gained a small amount of respect for him. Not much, but that's something, right? Sean goes, I respect him a tiny bit now. That's better than zero. Sean has zero respect for him. Yeah. He's like, the guy didn't go down.
Yeah. That's like, so, I mean, for anybody who hasn't been, hasn't like fought, even just sparring could be scary. Dude.
You shouldn't get in guys. You should not step in there with guys like Strickland unless you're a seasoned pro.
Yeah.
Because especially with Strickland, at least Strickland's not pretending like he's going to go nice.
Yeah.
I just don't think, I think Sneako had sparred a couple other pros, and they were maybe hit him a couple little jabs a little hard.
Oh, they maybe went easy on him, and
I think he thought I just meant like a little harder than that, because I'm not gonna go in there and try to knock a guy out like Sneako. I'm just not. It's just not my personality type, unless he does something to piss me off. And if he hit me with a huge overhand, maybe I would. Yeah. But if he's just I'm gonna go match at his pace. And Sean, this is not how Sean is. But one thing about Sean, he's consistent. Yeah. He spars like that with everyone. So
yeah, kicking ass, taking names, and so if you want to find Jake, just look up Jake Shields. He's all over the internet, literally. And I appreciate you so much for being here today.
Cool, man. Thanks you. Great talking.